text this morning is from Matthew 1 through 14. 1 through 14? 1 through 14. Okay. And when I was reading this, I read most of it. I had the wrong number on it. Okay, so as I was reading this, I thought of something that my mother used to tell me. And she said, if you're going to point fingers, remember there's 3 pointing back at you. So that's what this says today. Chapter 7. Do not judge, or you too will be judged. For in the same way you judge others, you will be judged. And with the measure you use, it will be measured to you. Why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye and pay no attention to the plank in your own eye? How can you say to your brother, let me take that speck out of your eye, when all the time there is a plank in your own eye? You hypocrite, first take the plank out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye. Do not give dogs what is sacred. Do not throw your pearls to pigs. If you do, they may trample them under their feet, and then they turn and tear you to pieces. Ask not, ask, and it will be given to you. Seek, and you will find. Knock, and the door will be opened to you. For everyone who asks receives. He who seeks finds, and to him who knocks, the door will be opened. Which of you, if his son asks for bread, will give him a stone? Or if he asks for a fish, will give him a snake? If you then, though you are evil, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your Father in heaven give good gifts to those who ask him? So in everything, do to others what you would have them do unto you, for this sums up the law and the prophets. Enter through the narrow gate, for wide is the gate and broad is the road that leads to destruction, and many enter through it. But small is the gate and narrow the road that leads to life, and only a few find it.
Some people are pretty surprised to see me up here. Pastor Cal is in the audience, but he got back late. Had a busy week, so he asked if I'd fill in for him this week, and I said sure. So you get to hear me again. Okay? I am a white, heterosexual, conservative Christian male. I feel I can say that here in this setting. I feel pretty confident that not too many people will judge me for those words. Not too many people will come at me and try to attack me for saying those things. So I feel comfortable doing that. But if I were to say that maybe at work, if I were to say that maybe in an open forum somewhere, I think we might have a different ball game. I think I would get attacked. I think I'd get judged. I'd be labeled something or another because of those words. Jesus talks about judging others. Cheryl read it this morning here just a little bit ago. We talked about judging others. We have a tendency to fall in that trap, I believe, to judge. But there's a few things we need to look at and to see where we're at, where our hearts are at when it comes to that. Cheryl, the easiest way to do this is instead of that, we just do like this. That way nothing's pointing back at me. Just kidding. I'm just kidding. But the first thing we need to do is if in this whole thing that it came across my mind, it just said, make sure you have the right attitude. Make sure we have a right attitude when we do this. Verse 1 of from the NIV says, do not judge, or you too will be judged. I believe this is a verse that most people could probably quote. It's probably a verse that most people don't even realize it's in the Bible. They just have heard it said, and heard it said. This verse is not a prohibition of judgment, nor is it a command to stop using godly wisdom, common sense, and moral courage, together with God's written word, to discern right from wrong. to distinguish between morality and immorality, and to judge doctrinal truth. Sometimes we have to judge. It's very important. Sometimes we have to. It's actually a biblical concept. Galatians chapter 1, verses 8 and 9 says, "But even if we or an angel from heaven should preach a gospel other than the one we preach to you, let him be eternally condemned. As we've already said, so now I say again, if anyone is preaching to you a gospel other than what you have accepted, let him be eternally condemned." 2 John chapter 10, 2 John verse 10, excuse me. "If anyone comes to you and does not bring this teaching, do not take him into your house or welcome him." We are to judge, but if we are to judge, but Jesus is saying not to judge, what are we supposed to do here then? What are our options? What exactly is Jesus meaning in this verse? I want to look at the Amplified Version. It has a few extra words in it. So don't yell at me if you are not an Amplified Version person. It's okay. Very wordy, but it's very good. Here's what it says here in verse 1. It says, "Do not judge and criticize and condemn others unfairly with an attitude of self-righteous superiority, as though assuming the office of judge, so that you will not be judged unfairly." You see, what Jesus is saying here is not to be proud, not to be self-righteous, not to be a haughty person. Haughty, H-A-U-G-H-T. Okay, I just want to clarify, not H-O-T-T-I-E like my wife refers to me. Do not be proud, self-righteous, haughty when we have to make judgments. We have to check our attitudes. The Covenant denomination several years ago, a few years back, had to make a judgment call. We had a congregation that wasn't exactly preaching God's word. It did exactly what we were faced with a situation, exactly what Paul was talking about, what John was talking about. They weren't preaching that gospel. We had to have a vote. We had a discussion about it in this congregation. We had to make a judgment. And we said we have to part ways with that church, with that individual body. Was it easy? No. Did we come in at it with a very self-righteous, that we are better, we are this or that? No. We came in at very humble, very concerned. And that's what Jesus is talking about. If we have to make these judgments, check your attitude. Check your attitude with it. I like to look at the Message version as well. The Message is just kind of a paraphrase. The Message states it this way in verse 1. It says, "Do not pick on people, jump on their failures, criticize their faults, unless, of course, you want the same treatment." Now, I read that verse, and it spoke to me immediately, because I love to pick on people. Ask my children. I love picking on my kids. I pick on their faults. I pick on a few things. I don't like to think I'm critical of it, but I'd like to jump on it. If my kids are talking and they just say one little word wrong, I jump all over it. Gwen, the other day, we were having a bit of my wife and Gwen were having a bit of a heated discussion I don't remember what it was about. All I remember is this. Gwen had her backpack, and she had spent the night somewhere, and she just got her ears pierced again on her birthday, and so she had to clean them. And she took along a bunch of Q-tips and the bottle to clean them with. And we were kind of just cleaning out the backpack after she got home, and the Q-tip thing came up. And Kristen said, get those Q-tips. I only saw one Q-tip in there. And Gwen, what? I had way more than that. I had like 3. And I did exactly that. I just started laughing. Way more. And I said, and I started laughing, and it distracted the whole conversation. And I said, I've got way more money than you. I've got $3 and you've only got $1. In the Durham household, we speak 3 things. We speak sarcasm, movie quotes, and song lyrics. Okay? It's just the way it is. But I pick on them. We make fun. When they dish it right back, though. Okay? They dish it right back. Now, I took it to this level here, and they've taken it to this level here, almost. Okay? So it kind of leads us into the next point. We got to hold our next verse, too. We got to hold ourselves accountable to the same standards that you set for yourself. We got to check our attitude, but then we have to hold ourselves accountable. Right? In verse 2 from the Amplified, it says, "For just as you hypocritically judge others when you are sinful and unrepentant, so will you be judged in accordance with your standard of measure, used to pass out judgment. Judgment will be measured to you." Our society today does not want to be judged the same way as it does the judging. There's a double standard. And it's everywhere. We are in the lovely election season, if you want to call it a season, I guess. Election cycle. And you hear it everywhere. Right? This person said this. Well, yeah, this person said this, which was very similar, and all of a sudden, it's bad here, but it's okay here. This person did this, and it's wrong, but this person did this, and it's okay. There's a double standard. Maybe there's a double standard at your workplace. You know, this person here got in trouble for the exact same thing that person got into trouble for. But that person got fired, and that person got a promotion. Seen it happen. Seen it happen. There can be even a double standard here in the church. Maybe not here in this church. I don't want to say that. But I want to say in the church, in general, there can be a double standard. Well, this person gives a lot of money. We can't confront him about this. Whereas this person here doesn't give anything, so we'll talk to him. We'll nail him. We'll come down hard on him. One thing we need to remember, though, is this. One day, we will be held accountable for all of our actions. We will be held accountable for all the judgments that we've handed out. We'll have to give an answer for everything we've said, everything we've done. Romans 14:12 says, "So then, each of us will give an account of ourselves to God." 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 10 says, "For we must all appear before the judgment seat of Christ, so that each of us may receive what is due us for the things done while in the body, whether good or bad." Don't forget, somebody is always watching us. Somebody is always watching us. So then if we want to check our attitudes, we need to be understanding that however we dish it out, we're going to get it back. That leads me to this. We better have some self-examination before we judge anything. Verses 3 through 5 says, "It's easy to see a smudge on your neighbor's face and be oblivious to the ugly sneer on your own. Do you have the nerve to say, 'Let me wash your face for you,' when your own face is distorted by contempt?" It is a whole traveling roadshow mentality all over again. Playing a holier-than-thou part instead of just living your part. Wipe that ugly sneer off your own face, and you might be fit to offer a washcloth to your neighbor. That's out of the Message version. When I look at your life and I see your faults, I am, in fact, blind to the problems that live in my own heart. My heart was as pure and as holy as I'd like to think it is, and I would not be focused on criticizing, condemning you and your faults. I'd not be in the business of tearing you down, but I'd be seeking now how I might build you up and how I could restore you. The problem with judging others is that we are often guilty of the same or even worse sins ourselves. I might see your faults. Chances are they're mine intensified. While we look at the way some people dress, the way they act, we looked at their outward sign of sin in their lives. We're often blind to see the prejudices, the hypocritical spirit, and other sins that lurk within our own heart. What makes you think that I'm in any position to straighten you out when I'm in such a mess myself? Here's the hard part. Here's the truth that is so hard to swallow sometimes. Jesus is saying that the sin of the critic is greater than the sin of the person being judged. When we talk about the flaw that is visible in someone else's life, we reveal a canyon in our own lives. We are revealing a heart that lacks genuine love for our neighbor. That ought to make us stop and think before we tear another person down just because they don't live up to our standards. Not God's standards, but our standards, right? Isn't that how we end up judging people? I have a set of standards, and you don't fit that mold. Therefore, you are not as holy as I am. You have issues. See, when I judge you by my standards, that's an issue. But when we take this book, this Word of God, and we go off of that and we judge off that, that's a different ball game. Because I'm not a perfect person. So therefore, my standards are not His standards. His standards are way above mine and way better. Jesus uses some pretty strong language here. He calls those of us who judge and criticize others hypocrites. He says that when we do this, we're merely acting like we are holier than we really are. Then he offers some valuable counsel to those of us who fall into this trap from time to time. Jesus tells us to first clean up our own lives. Then we'll be in a better position to help out our brothers and sisters. When our own heart is clean, we are told that we'll be able to see clearly. And once we clean up our own heart and our lives, we'll be able to see things a lot more clearly. We'll see our own hearts. We will see our own heart clearly. We will understand that we are prone to fall and that we are still in need of a Savior. We'll see God and the fact that we'll stand in His judgment before Him someday more clearly. We'll see our brothers and sisters more clearly. We'll see that they too need love, that they too need compassion. And we'll be able to help them a lot more clearly. When our hearts have been fixed, when our vision has been cleared up, we'll be able to reach out to those who have fallen or to those who have yet to come to know Jesus. We will not approach them with a spirit of judgment, with a spirit of criticism, or even a spirit of condemnation, but we'll be able to come to them with a spirit of compassion and restoration. There ought to be a desire to help those who have fallen and to win those who are not yet followers. Neither is possible as long as we have a judgmental, critical spirit. When we walk in love with one another, we'll be in the business of building up and not tearing down. Through all this, though, we have to use discernment as well. After we have examined our own lives and got our hearts right or right for the first time, we have a tendency to maybe overreact. We try to right our wrongs by doing things we would not normally do. Go places that maybe we wouldn't normally go. Verse 6 tells us, do not give dogs what is sacred. Do not throw pearls to pigs. If you do, they may trample them under their feet and then turn and tear you to pieces. Once again, after our hearts are right again or for the first time, we want to go out in the world and share what has happened to us. We want to tell our story. Sometimes we go into those places that they're just the worst places to go. Sometimes our own home. Okay? It might not be the best idea. This verse is not a directive against evangelizing to the Gentiles, especially when we have a book full of various ways that support this idea. Dogs and pigs here refer to any person who has given clear evidence of rejecting the gospel with vicious scorn and hardened contempt. If we go to some of the worst places we can think of, they may have people there that will turn on us quickly and could possibly become violent towards us when we share our transformation, thanks to Jesus. So what do we need to do? Well, verses 7 to 11 give us an opportunity to go to figure it out. It says ask, seek, and knock. We're going to ask for God for several things. For one, for forgiveness. God, I was one of those hypocrites. I judged people harshly. Please forgive me for that. We can ask for direction. God, where can you use us? How can you use us, God? How can you use me in my day-to-day life? And for strength. We can ask for strength. Strength to accomplish what he has asked us to do. I can guarantee that all the times I've asked God, where do you want to use me? He's had no problems telling me exactly where he wanted me to go. And he's given me the strength to do it. Some days I feel weaker than others, but he has given me the strength to make it through. And I'm very thankful for that. So we ask God. Ask God for direction. Ask God what we need to do, and he'll give us that. We also need to seek God out. We need to spend time in his word. We need to seek God out. He's in his word. We need to get there, spend some time with him, hang out with him, learn more about him. Let him talk to us. We need to knock on the doors. We need to knock on doors. When we encounter people, don't be afraid to bring Jesus up in conversations. That's an opportunity to knock on a door. We have to be aware of those situations that are going on around us, those people that are around us, because that way somebody might one day give a very subtle hint as to wanting to know about Jesus, but they don't come out and say it. We have to be aware of that. We have to be able to knock on that door then and say, hey, God, is this you telling me to do something here? Knock on the door and see if God's right there. See how open they are to that. If we get a feeling that God is calling us to do something, we need to be able to act upon it. Might not happen right at that moment, but we still need to knock on the doors just to see if he's there. If he's not, then we move on to the next door, the next opportunity, the next moment. When we do these three things, God will give us the good gifts that he gives. And as a result, we need to come down, it comes right down to it, we need to follow the golden rule. This is another one of those verses that I think almost everybody can quote. Once again, maybe they don't even know what's in the Bible, but they can surely share it. Verse 12, so in everything do to others what you would have them do to you. For this sums up the law and the prophets. How do you want to be treated? How do you want to be treated? Do you want to be judged harshly, critically? Or do you want to be judged fairly? Do you want to be treated with contempt? Or do you want to be treated with respect? Do you want to be treated with anger, and hate? Or do you want to be treated in love? Choice we get to make. Choice we have to make. Choice that's there. Brings us to the last section of scriptures that we read this morning. The wide gate and the narrow gate. Wide gate is very enticing. It's easy to travel on. It's easy to go with. There was a T-shirt when the Family Christian Bookstore was in town that said this: "Any dead fish can swim downstream." And I think that's the way the wide path, the wide gate is. It's easy to travel upon. It's easy to go. It's simple. Everybody's doing it. Have your kids ever said that? Come on, man, everybody's doing it. And then what's the usual parent reply to that? Well, if your friends were jumping off a bridge, would you? Anyway. It's very enticing to follow along. It looks fun. Looks great. Everybody's over there. But then there's this narrow gate, this narrow path. Not many people are on that one. But it's the one that leads to life. That's the one that leads to life. I remember working construction for a while. We did seamless rain gutters. And talking to a gentleman, one of my coworkers, and he said, I don't know how we got in the conversation, but we started talking about kind of living. He goes, "Yeah, I'm living." I said, "No, buddy, you're alive." He's like, "What?" I said, "I'm living." He's like, "What are you talking about?" I said, "You're just following the path of everybody else. It leads to destruction. It's not happy. You're not a happy person. You're stressed out all the time. You're this, you're that. You can see all this stuff." I said, "I'm alive because of Christ." And we had a nice little conversation about that. He was on the wide path, the wide gate. He was heading right towards it. I was on the narrow path. Still am. I want to use that improperly here. Tried to get him over to the narrow path. Had an opportunity. Not as glamorous. Not as glorifying. I mean, it's not as worldly. Not worldly at all. But boy, is it a lot of fun. I saw a shirt, too, the other day that says, if you're bored as a Christian, you're doing it wrong. You're doing it wrong. This is the way it is. And so we come now and we come to this part of the service where we get to partake in communion. We're going to do that here soon, shortly.